What's the scariest nightmare you ever had? One you can't forget even after years? Old fag here. 40 years ago I was 6. Had a dream about being outside my house, bunch of homeless folk outside crouching around bonfires keeping warm. One of them said to me, "Get inside Anon, Jack, the drill is coming." Could hear a whirring noise over the fields. Runs to my front door, gets inside, there a fucking guy with a head like a drill spinning. Mum and dad don't seem bothered, just watching TV. Manage to lock the door, but the fucking thing puts its head next to the lock and then the lock's bust. Woke up. So yeah, 40 years ago and I still remember it so vividly. B10. Playing hide and seek in the house with my mom. Mom catches me. Me laughing. Mom picks me up with one arm and quickly takes me to my room while taking long awkward strides. Stop laughing. Mom holds me right in front of her face. She has no whites in her eyes, just black and foggy. Can't scream. She rips my teeth out all at once as if I had dentures in my mouth. Rips her teeth out like dentures and forces her teeth set into my mouth. Wake up. I've never told this dream because I don't want to know what it means in psychological setting. Walk into kitchen. Mom's head is on the table. Her eyes open, they are black. Opens mouth making horrifying yowling noise. Head begins floating towards me. Snapping teeth. I try to run but slow motion dream time. Mom bites ankles. Scream. Wake up instantly. I had a weird one not too long ago. I was walking through the woods with some things that seemed familiar. I only perceived them as nondescript, shapeless, shadowy forms. We noticed a very normal, friendly-looking guy who was either following us or just walking along. They at first wanted to meet him, but I told them to stay away because he's a demon. He looked smug about that. Then I stared at him, watching him. He stopped being smug and seemed to get annoyed and the dream ended. When I was 9, my dad died of colon cancer. I had a dream one night that suddenly he was able to be resurrected. It was unclear how long he was dead. I remember feeling like it wasn't that long. In reality I was 18, but in the dream it felt like maybe I was 14 based on the fact I was still doing stuff I did around that time. So he walks in the door and he seems normal, just his skin is a little gray. I felt like I couldn't say anything. I wanted to say something, but no words would come out. It was like joy, but not really. More a feeling of anxiety. Like there was so much I needed to say and I would not say anything because I was overwhelmed. He gets to talking to my mom and I'm kind of just sitting there in awe. Then suddenly, as they're talking about what's changed with the house, my dad kind of goes haywire. It's like he stroked out or something. Everything from there on out is hard to remember. I do know that over the course of the dream it was like he was phasing in and out of reality. Almost felt as if it was him occupying his body and trying to be normal, but he was dead and something was unnatural about the situation. I don't put any stock into dreams meaning something. This dream did feel kind of meaningful. Like my subconscious trying to process his death somehow. Although I already feel like I have. He died many years ago. I don't know what to think about the dream, but I know something about him missing from my life must have triggered that. When I was a child I had this recurring nightmare that I was running in the dark amidst these tall red rockets. I thought they were nukes of course, and then they all started launching. It was only then that I realized that they weren't rockets but dog dicks. Huge red dog dicks. To this very day, I can't look at a dog. Probably the nightmare I had back in August of last year. I dreamt that I was inside of some kind of virtual reality simulation where I was playing a fully immersive lifelike game of Pokemon. I was just about to get started on my journey walking around, when I suddenly bumped into an invisible wall in front of me. My Pokemon kept on moving through the wall as though it wasn't there. Suddenly everything around me turned into a dark gray poorly lit room, like a prison cell, and there was a girl with long black hair like from the Ring standing behind me. She started lunging at me while making distorted, glitchy computer sounds. Think how Pokemon cries sounded in the old GBA games, and where her face should have been there was just a glitchy moving swirl of color. I reached out with my arms and tried to hold her back while I rearranged her face so I could figure out who she was, but no matter how I tried to move it, it remained an indistinct blur. And then I woke up, and the dream felt real enough to me that I was legitimately terrified for the next week or so. As an interesting side note, this is around the point in my life when I had a massive uptick in paranormal shit happening to me, that continues to this day. Fun times. I used to have recurring dreams as a kid of some sort of shadowy man back when I lived with my grandpa. Sometimes he was on my ceiling crawling towards me or sitting on the edge of my bed just watching, could never see any sort of features, he was just cold and tall. Ironically enough, my mum believed in psychics and a lot of them told her they saw a presence near me. Years later I found out the previous owner of my grandpa's house died there, so I don't know how I feel. These dreams stopped when me and my mum moved out. Only one. I haven't ever forgotten it. I was in an old fancy hotel. It was sometime in December because there were Christmas trees in the lobby. Everyone was completely normal except for this elderly couple. A man and a woman who looked to be in their 70s or 80s. They would have been mostly normal because they wore typical old people clothing and had the kind of hair you'd expect. But their skin was an inhuman gray color. It wasn't like the gray color people have when they're dead. This was like a deeper gray color. Every other second or so they would say scissors in unison. But they talked without speaking. Almost like they were broadcasting it into people's minds. The voice itself didn't match them at all. They spoke with a gravelly voice that sounded like it belonged to a 30-year-old chain smoker. Possibly the strangest part, however, is that nobody else in this entire hotel seemed to notice anything was wrong with them. They were even talking to the clerk at the front desk, who was just smiling away as if nothing was any different. Except I could tell. And that's when they noticed me. They just started walking towards me slowly, repeating that same word every few seconds. I ran upstairs into a room I had apparently booked and shut the door. I thought it was okay up until I realized I hadn't shut the door all the way, and I could see their feet through the crack in the door. I felt my stomach sink like I was doomed, and then I woke up. To this day I still don't know what prompted that dream or why it was like that. I hadn't watched any horror movies or played any scary games around the time I had that dream, and I've certainly never been to any fancy old hotels. Going with my friends to practice rounds on cans at an outside firing range in Arizona. Things looked normal. We were heading uphill to get in our cars and go home. We heard some lady screaming and running up another pathway with her clothes ripped off and barefoot. A gang of 5 Latino men chased and shot her leg, incapacitating her to the ground. They grabbed her and us thought she was going to be assaulted. Instead they started biting her and then ripping her to shreds. We noped it out of there, and there was nowhere to hide because the whole world was shooting and ripping each other to pieces. Went to our jobs and found the keys to the armored truck. I woke up thinking it was real. I told my friends about the nightmare and they said they had similar nightmare with everyone attacking each other. This was in 2008. Scariest nightmare I've had to date still fucks with me to this date. It happened a few years ago and I haven't had a memorable nightmare since. Be dreaming. Suddenly be assaulted with visions of gore, people with their faces being pulled off, mutilated body parts, etc. Visions subside and I witness a scene of a Harlequin baby murdering a baby with a knife while on top of the baby and swinging its hips against it. Wake up with my entire body feeling warm, feel a sense of dread as I rise out of bed. Stay awake for the rest of the night. Have no idea what the fuck it meant, but at the time it was extremely vivid and fucked with me for a while. As mundane as it sounds, it still kind of creeps me out. The only other nightmares I remember was when I was a kid, and all of those were pretty run-of-the-mill. I remember about 5 years ago I had like 10 false awakenings consecutively. I woke up in my bedroom in the dream realm, and it was so convincing because it literally looked and felt exactly like my real bedroom. I remember laying on my bed in the dream realm for a few seconds wondering if I woke up back to the physical dimension, and then I would roll over and go back to sleep in the dream world. And then I would wake up again 5 seconds later in my bed questioning if I was actually awake or not. This happened over and over at least 10 times before I finally woke up for real. It scared the fucking shit out of me because every time I had a false awakening, I knew I was still in the dream world, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't leave. To feel like you might actually be trapped in another dimension while stuck in a disoriented state of consciousness is one of the most fucking terrifying things ever. I dreamt I was in the back seat of a sedan with 2 elderly ladies seated to my left and right. They both looked at me, and the man driving the car said, "Here we go," calmly. He floored it to near impossible speeds, and as we go faster, the 2 ladies begin cackling hysterically while looking directly at me. As they laugh, and speed rises, they age faster and faster to the point where you could barely recognize them as human. I yelled and woke up. It was very quick, but it stuck with me for over 20 years now. They were recurring and happened mostly when I was a little kid. Everything in the dream would be extremely tessellated. I'm referring to the 3D graphics effect. Imagine deep canyon like no man's land cottage cheese textures all over everything. Nothing is smooth. The maximum of imperfection and asymmetry is in every detail of every surface. It gets worse. I would wake up and I would see that everywhere around me, totally lucid. Made me feel like I couldn't escape. I would constantly try to touch smooth textures like a bed sheet, but that would horribly intensity things. It's one of the strangest experiences I've ever had. The scariest one I ever had was being a cop in a firefight and getting shot in the head. I felt myself fall and heard my death rattle, but everything went black. I couldn't breathe after a minute and felt hot blood pouring out of my head for about a minute. Then I woke up. It felt very real too. My grandparents used to live in a farmhouse from the mid-1890s. The whole front of the house, being the original section, was always too hot, and generally fucking creepy. This isn't really germane to the story as much as to just give you an idea of the setting. Anyways, the dream consisted of me going up the narrow hard pine stairs, rounding the corner to go up the second flight. Stairs turn 90 degrees halfway up to a small landing. Where there is normally a wall, there was another room, I believe. It was weird. I spent the dream trying to find the right skeleton key for the upper locked portion of a cabinet similar in style to Pickrell. Whole dream was weird, and 2 other family members have had similar dreams. Both of theirs were darker though, involving a room where there was a window, and reality / the house collapsing or being chased out by something. Really, the whole property is fucked. It terrifies me and at the same time sobers me knowing other people have dreams exactly like this. When my brother told me he would also have recurring dreams that my grandmother's room had a secret room inside, I think I just wanted to panic and weep at the same time. Just some soft, odd, desperate momentary whimper went off inside me. When I was kid, after my grandfather died, I would have nightmares that my grandmother was keeping him in a coffin underneath her floor. I had a more recent dream after she passed, too, that there was a hidden door in the little nook in her room, and yep, believe it or not, a key that was in her drawer that I knew would open it. I was too scared. Not just about the room though. Probably more often, I've dreamed that in the backyard, attached to the house, was an old shack covered by trees which I never noticed before. Often there were ancient relatives and long-forgotten uncles living in there. Damn. I was in a giant empty concrete room with no doors and no windows. There was a small ledge against the wall halfway between the floor and ceiling, think about 50 feet off the ground, and I'm standing there. Opposite me, on the other wall, there was a huge drain, that was so dark inside I couldn't really distinguish what was in there. All of a sudden, tons and tons of black, fetid water starts pouring out of the drain and filling the room very rapidly. I'm terrified that I'm either going to fall off the ledge into the water, or it's going to keep rising until it reaches the ceiling, taking me with it. I wake up right as it reaches the ledge I'm standing on. Wake up. Whole house is groaning and popping like it's about to collapse. Look out my bedroom window to see WTF. Literal blackness. Go downstairs. Kitchen floor covered in shallow puddle of water. Shit, we got a busted pipe. Turn on kitchen light. Looking for flashlight. Catch movement outside back glass door. Look outside. Pitch black other than light coming from inside. Not my yard, looks like gray sand. Realize water is coming in around the door. House is underwater. Deep underwater. See gigantic ass angler fish looking fucker with glass teeth just at edge of the light. Not swimming, crawling toward me. Glass cracks. Wake up, bolt upright. Okay, so in my dream it was me and my mother, we went to an elegant ball and everything was fine, then suddenly, my mother had to make a very important phone call, so we decided to go in a distant place where she couldn't get disturbed. That's the perfect place to make a phone call, she said to me while pointing an abandoned school. I asked her what that building was supposed to be and she replied that it was a private school built by a cult to indoctrinate children, but it is now abandoned since all the members of the cult died. We both enter the school without having any doubt about what we are doing. She starts talking to the phone very loudly. I'm starting to panic a little and I don't know why. Then I interrupt her and say, "Mom, can we exit this place already? The portraits made to match Hillary Clinton are starting to look creepy." She agrees and we slowly walk down the stairs. I see that the walls are full of drawing of angels and books and there is an inscription there. It said, Leviticus 11:19. Suddenly all the light goes out and we have to run away. Then I woke up. My God, this dream still keeps me up at night. When I was a kid, around 6 or 7 years old, I had the worst nightmare I had ever had. I remember it to this day. Before I had this dream, I would have incredible night terrors. I am native and my mother was superstitious, so she would put dream catchers up to try and help ward off the nightmares. I remember at one point I had at least 10 surrounding my room. In retrospect, I think I was being haunted by demons. Now onto the dream. I was in what appeared to be an underground tunnel or mineshaft like pig related. I remember that I was running from something. I say thing, because I honestly can't tell you what it was. It stood on 2 legs, and appeared to drink blood. I remember running, up until I saw my mom dead. I vividly remember her laying in a pile of her own blood. When I saw her, I tried screaming, but then I realized that I couldn't make any sound or even breathe. Then whatever creature was chasing me grabbed me from behind and started biting my neck. I still couldn't scream or make any noise. Right at that moment, I woke up with my mother shaking me to try and wake me up. As soon as I woke up I screamed bloody murder and was bawling my eyes out. This dream was incredibly realistic. I should also note that I sometimes see the future in dreams. However, it's not by choice. It's random things that sometimes don't happen for years after the dream. My grandmother says it's a native thing, but who knows? Could I have dreamt of a reptilian? Another dream I had a while ago, notable because I rarely have nightmares nowadays. I'm not even sure if this counts because it's technically not a nightmare. About a year ago, I was living in my old apartment by myself. I had a few weird things happen there. Every night, I usually listen to a quiet video to get my mind off stuff and help me sleep. An example is the Exploring series on YouTube. I remember I had just fallen asleep, when out of nowhere I hear this ear rape roar sound that sounded like a mixture of a dog's growl and a lion's roar right in my ear. I immediately shot out of bed because I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I checked the computer I was watching the video on, and it was my normal playlist for sleep. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. To this day I still don't know what the fuck that was. Being stuck in a series of dreams where two entities throughout at least 34 dream scenarios played an active role as characters in them, disguising themselves as the relevant characters and playing along until I would notice. When I'd find out, they would just give up the act, almost cheerfully talked about it like some fucking after talk, and after the dream would reset, with me only remembering fragments of it, thinking it a dream. With each layer the dreams became more distorted, and eventually I just didn't even get out of bed since I knew I would be stuck in yet another dream. Took me half an hour when I actually was awake to realize I was in fact awake for real. Felt like utter shit for days afterwards. Fella I knew suffered more than anyone I had ever even heard of. Unspeakable. I believe he has since killed himself, but in the brief window I knew him he brought a tremendous amount of grief to everyone. I dreamed I was in the hall of a hospital, and I felt his ghost suffering in some dark corner, and I turned and found a pile of guts on the floor, which lifted and hovered in the air. And then started spinning, spinning, spinning until all I saw was this spinning shining torus of human suffering. It started glimmering silver, like it being perfected. I just felt something demonic about it. Like his suffering was eternal. Not the scariest dream ever, but the most haunting. When I was 19 or so, I had a dream that I was in my kitchen and found a tiny man, about a foot tall, who lived behind my toaster. I remember that he didn't speak English, but he seemed kind of curious and friendly, almost like a dog. I picked him up and showed him more of the room before, without any prompting, I bashed his head open against the sink. Then, I pulled out a piece of his brain and ate it. It wasn't such a scary dream when I was having it, but when I woke up, I legitimately got worried that it was so weird that it might be an early sign of some kind of psychological issue.
Fucking kecked.
So I haven't shared this with anyone because I have simply shrugged it off as being young and being afraid. But when I was young I was infatuated with trains. Like Thomas the Tank Engine and all that shit. I lived, shit, breathed trains. So to the dream. I used to have this reoccurring dream that I was stuck on a railroad track. I don't remember if I was tied up to the track or if I was laying on them and could not move. The train would be approaching me, honking and all that good shit. But the terror and dread of the train hitting me would wake me up. The train never hit me though in my dream. I would have it so often that I can remember it 20 plus years later. I'm not sure what the dream meant or what it symbolized. It's the only reoccurring dream that I have ever really had that filled me with dread. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. If anyone can add anything, then please feel free to do so.
I live with my boyfriend and 2 cats. One dream I woke up in bed tied up and couldn't speak for some reason. That feeling where you try to yell and shout but only a small whimper comes out. Some eerily tall, like 7 or 8 feet and skinny men in suits had BF and the cats similarly restrained on chairs from the dinner table. They snapped all of their necks with their bare hands one at a time. I can still see the image of their limp bodies if I try to remember, those lifeless eyes. Then they all came and put their huge, skinny hands on my shoulders and head, my vision narrows, and then I actually wake up. I also have recurrent nightmares with themes of my teeth breaking and slash or falling out, and dreams that end with an asteroid killing everybody.
Standing in a train station. No clue where I was going or why I was there. Just vibing, waiting for the train to come. Train is just about to arrive at the station. Suddenly, a guy gets up and pushes a woman in front of the train. She doesn't have time to get out of the way. Turn away to avoid looking at her death. Hear screaming, yelling, and gasping from onlookers who just watched this woman die. Wake up. This is why I stand minimum of 10 feet away from the edge of station platforms. I was walking way back to home and it was sunset, then it quickly changed to evening and I ran as if I was worried of something chasing me. When I came home I checked kitchen out of curiosity. There was nothing there except the usual. I went to living room, said hi to parents and went to my room, but there was something off. I didn't enter the room but tried to turn on lights first, stretching my arm to light switch. It didn't work. I asked Dad if there is something wrong with the light, but he said everything is okay. He asked me if I could bring some glasses from kitchen. I said okay and went to the kitchen. Light didn't work here too. It was quiet. I entered kitchen and something shadowy quickly catched me. All I heard was static noise and loud electrical sounds. There was also this weird feeling on spine as if someone heated it with industrial heater. I woke up all in sweat. The most horrifying nightmare I ever had is actually kind of similar to Up image. I have had lots of terrifying dreams, but the most terrifying, for whatever reason, which caused me not to sleep in the room for weeks afterward. It was the first night sleeping in the finished attic and I was probably about 9 or 10 years old. There was the voice of a radio announcer talking about a missing maid, or a dead maid. I saw the legs of a police officer walking through the woods, as if from his perspective. He was dressed in somewhat old-fashioned clothing, much like he were from the 1920s to 1950s or so. He stopped at a pale dead body of a woman, face down, and he put his hand on her arm and turned her. The dead body had the biggest, most horrific smile I ever saw. I woke up so terrified that I could not sleep in the attic for weeks afterward. I don't remember most of the dream, but this specific part was the only dream I ever had that caused me to wake up screaming. I had been running or somehow exerting myself, and I was resting on the landing of the stairs of my old childhood home, which at the time was the house I was living in. Sitting with my back to the wall and catching my breath. All of the lights were off, so the only light in the house was moonlight coming through the windows and just barely allowing me to see what was around me. I'm looking down the stairway and from the left wall, I see fingers slowly creep around and grip the corner. A woman I'd never seen before poked her head out very slowly to look at me, and although I couldn't see her mouth, I could tell from her eyes that she had a manic grin and was softly giggling. She had unnaturally colored hair as well. I was hit with the most intense fear I've ever felt in my life. I was scrambling against the wall behind me, unable to look away from her face, and I had little control over my mouth. I was trying to scream out, "Who are you?" but it came out as unintelligible yelling and groaning. Apparently I did manage to articulate myself pretty well in reality, because my mom was woken up by my screams and came into my room to wake me up. When I woke up, I thought she was the woman from my dream, so I kept going for a little bit, but eventually I calmed down. One of the weirdest dreams of my life, not due to any specific content, but just the pure depths of fear I felt.
When I was 3 or 4, I slept with my parents cause I had very bad anxiety and was too scared to sleep on my own. I slept between both of them. One night I woke up and looked at the closet and bedroom doors. I saw dark figures walk to and from each door. There were 2 of them. Suddenly they were prone on the bed in front of me looking at me. They were completely black besides their eyes, which were white with black pupils. I wanted to wake my parents up, but I was so scared I couldn't speak. When I did, they lunged at me and I woke up. Still remember it clearly to this day.
For a period of time, I had strange recurring nightmares about anomalies in the sky. Sometimes, it'd be an unknown force showing up in the sky and fighting with the US Air Force. Other times, the clouds would take on a sinusoidal pulsing pattern. Unlike a typical dream, where emotions are muted and there's a sense of unreality, the situations were experienced as if they were really happening in real life, as in. They induced fear, just like if you heard today that an unknown force showed up in the sky and the government didn't know how to respond. Very disturbing, and left me with an unsettling emotion whenever I saw helicopters in the sky for a while. A few years ago I was camping with a small group of scouts on a small uninhabited island in an archipelago. It was normal mostly, but as we were going around I found the bones of some dead animal. I didn't think much of it. Then as night came and we were around a fire, I kept thinking I saw a figure behind some trees. We went to sleep and in the middle of the night I woke up. I clearly heard something that sounded like breathing and a strange gnashing sound. I can't replicate the sound. It didn't sound like something a human could have done. I lied still and held my breath until eventually it went away. I didn't sleep that night. During the morning I felt like we needed to leave before night fell again, and I had horrible dreams of being chased by monsters in the woods for weeks. Recently I dreamt that someone was redubbing old cartoons to make the characters refer to each other with the names of my family and I lay in bed in the dark, disturbed by this information, when I heard the voice of whoever was dubbing over the cartoons coming from somewhere in my room. I yelled at it to stop, and a man without skin got up from the floor of my bedroom, opened the window and leapt outside. I yelled after him, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you," before I woke up with a gasp. Worst nightmare ever was waking up at the age of 6 in my childhood bedroom but remembering my current life. And freaking the fuck out, realizing that if I didn't do everything the exact same that I could fuck up my future, never meet my wife, and my kids wouldn't be born. My mom came in to wake me up and I was sobbing, trying to explain that something happened to me and I was actually 33 with my own family and I needed to get back to them. And she actually started to believe me because I wasn't articulating like a 6-year-old. Can't remember how it ended, but I woke up and realized I was sobbing in my sleep. I've had monster nightmares and encountered shadow people while sleep paralyzed, but nothing comes close to the pure existential horror I felt with that one.
Wake up in old home's bedroom. Feels incredibly real and vivid. Remember getting dressed and washing face like normal. It's early in the morning, still dark outside. It's summer-ish, with the windows open and the sound of crickets. Go downstairs and find my own self sitting at the kitchen countertop, hunched over. It's clutching the sides of its head, but the head is spinning rapidly with black stuff leaking from eyes/mouth. Look past me to large mirror about 7 feet high with an ornate border. Enter it and find a strange, very dark liminal space, like an open ballroom with no furniture and only a large chandelier. Small dim colored lights like green and pink are spotted around the floors near the walls. Motion feels incredibly slow in this space, like how it would be to walk on the moon. Walk through the large room to a door and find another room just like it. Repeating for a while as it feels like I'm being pursued, but unsure by what, just uneasy. Finally wake up with a jolt. I had this dream after waking up just before my alarm. I had maybe slept only a couple minutes, but in my dream it felt like half an hour had passed, and it was also realistic and vivid. Can any subconscious Anon help me? I still think about this a lot.
I don't really know how to describe it in green text without it sounding like nonsense, so I'm just gonna try and type it out and see how it goes. I was really young at the time. Me and my parents just moved a week before a huge blizzard snowed everything in. We all got sick with a really bad stomach flu too. So we're just all lying down in a barren living room on 2 mattresses pushed together, sweating and shivering, occasionally vomiting into a huge bowl. I remember my mom telling me the fever got so bad she thought my dad might die. He barely talked during it and was just passed out the entire time in this cold, barren room, just huddled together. I remember going in and out of the same dream again and again, where I would be in a gigantic round dome. It was made of steel and it was so gigantic I couldn't comprehend it. There were other people on the side of this dome talking and laughing about something. I forget what was in the middle, but it was loud and bright. For whatever reason as well, whenever I looked at it, I felt my vision shift in and kept looking deeper into it. It was like vertigo from looking over a skyscraper without understanding how tall it is, but with how large the dome was, with everything seeming so big and small at the same time. Then I would wake up to this pitch black room, save for some candles, cold sweat on my skin, and my dad breathing heavy. And I would lay down, feel how cold my back was, and do all over again. I don't know why, but ever since then the idea of how big outer space is scares me. Scariest nightmare, hands down, was one I had when I was like maybe 4 or so. I remember laying in my bed and getting out of bed, with this floaty feeling, and walking over to my window next to my bed and peeking into my backyard. My back door was further down the house to the left and I was almost all the way on the right of the house, next to this huge grapefruit tree. I was just looking out over the backyard and getting this really freaked out feeling like something was wrong. And then what I thought was some bushes by the tree turned quick over its shoulder to look at me with red glowing eyes. The thing looked like an owl but man-shaped, and it locked eyes with me and then sprinted for my back door, and I screamed but nothing came out. I woke up hyperventilating, like terrified that it was somehow in my house, so I tried to be quiet and hide under my covers, but there was like a dripping and creaking sound outside. So I peeked out and my whole room was warped and weird, so I jumped up screaming and ran to my parents' room. Turned out there was a huge leak over my bedroom and the whole thing was about to collapse. Seriously, the most horrifying shit. Also in For Owlman/Mothman, I'm not LARPing, I don't believe in a paranormal owl man that foreshadows disaster, but the existence of that myth does make the nightmare scarier in retrospect. Maybe even the reason I haven't been able to forget it. I was in an all-white room, like an interrogation room, but very very bright. I sat across from a man in a bright white suit. There was a sense of absolute dread in the dream just sitting there, but he told me that when the green light turned on I would die. I looked up from where I was sitting in the dream to see that above me was nothing but dark skies, but a green light came into focus high up. I woke up like I was waking up from a night terror, couldn't go back to sleep for the rest of the night. While the dream wasn't like, objectively scary in itself, the dread was the worst shit I've ever felt in a dream. My heart was beating so fast that my chest hurt and I genuinely felt like I could have had a heart attack. Had a dream located in one of my dream locations, pretty much a place that I've never been to physically but is used as a location often in my dreams. Massive rusty sheet metal mall-like structure, located in the middle of a cornfield, Went there to buy cigars this time for some reason. This kid I knew from when I worked fast food in college is there. He's showing off his new revolver to me, begins spinning it. As I yell for him to stop, the gun goes off. I freak out and say that he could have killed me. He just stares in shock at the floor, nothing is there. Brush it off as shock, pop into store selling random vinyl records and 8 tracks, a few CDs were there on the rotting wooden counter. Attempt to pick one up to look at it, physically can't. I try to talk to the clerk, he doesn't acknowledge me. As I'm panicking and try to leave, some older homeless looking guy stops me. Tells me I'm dead, but that I'm a half spirit. Teaches me how to absorb energy from plants so I can leave the place and become corporeal again. Tells me I can teleport now, that I just have to have the energy and the place in mind. I for some reason teleport to some coast I've never seen before. There are 3 massive pillars with weird text written horizontally down the side. I look at the text and for some reason can understand the text as some sort of offering for me to become a warrior or soldier of some type. Walk into the ocean. Wake up still smelling the salt in the air and the wind on the coast. Memory of it still fills me with existential dread for some reason. Once I dreamed that I woke up but I didn't know anything. I recognized my bedroom and knew what everything was, but I didn't know a bed was called a bed or a wall was called a wall. My mind was in this weird blank state. I just sat up in bed and looked around scared as fuck. I looked to my left and saw some black letters burned into the sheetrock wall beside me, but I couldn't read what it said. Of course, it was a false awakening. I woke up soon after and everything was fine. When I was like 5 years old. Walk into the kitchen. Mom is at the stove. Mom is covering the stove vent with a dish rag. Mom, what are you doing? I'm trying to keep the ghost out. Look to the door in the kitchen that leads to the backyard. At the door is floating a ghost with a white pumpkin with a jack-o'-lantern face for a head and white sheets below it. I know, it sounds stupid as hell now, but for a naive innocent 5-year-old it's utterly terrifying. Wake up. Have exact same dream 3 nights in a row. Another one. Again around the same age. Go to a library by a park, there's a diagonal pipe sticking out of the ground. Somehow get in the pipe. Nothing but darkness below. Can't get out. Start sliding down. Wake up. Finally. Around the same age. Walk into my living room. In the corner of the living room there's a horribly disfigured man. Wearing striped shirt. He runs at me. I turn around. Running in place. I wake up. This is years before Nightmare on Elm Street came out, BTW. I had a dream somewhat recently that stuck with me because of how detailed it was and that I remembered it so easily. So we were stationed on Europa studying the moon when we receive a transmission that said the vacuum of space had somehow become corrosive. Earth is screwed and colonies in space were scrambling to figure out a plan as this force or gas was heading our way. We were aware of this facility being built that was nearly finished inside Jupiter. It was meant to be a one-way prison of sorts. Shuttles would go into the planet and dock onto the station. Old ported shuttles were filled with garbage and jettisoned. It was already in use in a very small-scale way. The station was being powered by the planet, but I had no idea how that worked. I got the impression I was a research assistant of some kind for the military. The time scale for this is hours as we get ready, knowing this is a one-way trip as the escape velocity for the planet is just insane, and now with Earth gone and who knows what else, help wasn't coming. Going into the planet was absolutely terrifying and soul-crushing, especially since the smaller facility we were in had so few people going out. Jupiter is fucking huge. Like it was just a solid red color outside the window until that's all we could see. Once inside the facility, all we could do was plug into these machines that worked like VR to escape. Each one was designed to subtly torture the prisoners that were there. Like your life would be relatively normal, but everyone in the simulation would hate you for some reason you'd never be able to do anything about. Lifetimes could be experienced in a short amount of time, which was lucky since the corrosive element would likely rot away Jupiter as well. When I woke up, the transition was smooth enough to make me think it was possible as was true. It's a little too convenient that those were subjects I read about recently, so it very likely isn't. I fucking hope so anyway. Be 6 or 7 years old. Never really exposed to anything overtly violent or grotesque. No adult media or horror at that age yet. Which is what makes this so unnerving even now. Have a nightmare. I am visiting a friend's house that is a typical suburban setup with a garage next to the front door. As we sit down to watch Ninja Turtles in the living room, we hear a growling coming from the door that leads to the garage. It sounds slimy and very unnerving. Music starts playing that sounds like a baby crib song, but heavily off-key and distorted. My friend says, "Oh no, it's him." I feel compelled to go into the garage. The growling turns into a distorted chanting that's almost that of a normal adult New Yorker sounding man.
Na 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 boo boo. Na 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 boo boo.
The chanting fills me with unbelievable fear as I approach the door. My friend is crying behind me. He is genuinely horrified. I open it up, and in the corner of the garage is a pile of garbage shaped like a king's throne. Sitting on top of it is half man half rat wearing a tattered royal cape and junky rusted crown. Its eyes are bulging out of its head and its skin and fur is melting down its face. Blood is leaking out of its mouth and eye sockets. It leans towards me, chanting even louder and angrier.
Na 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 boo boo.
Louder and angrier. My vision starts tinting red as it stands up. Guts falling out of its hairy rotting corpse of a body.
Na 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 boo boo. Na 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 boo boo.
My friend screams bloody murder and runs in the opposite direction. I am frozen with terror. The rotting rat man starts walking towards me.
Na 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 boo boo.
He points his bony finger towards me as he gets halfway across the room.
Na 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 boo boo.
This fills me with the most intense fear I have ever felt to this day. I scream in fear as I wake up in my bed. To this day the phrase na 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 boo boo in children's media unsettles me into a dull fear. I have never had that dream again since that night. It traumatized me.